So the topic for today's discussion is signals as vectors. Vectors in complex vector space. Okay, we will call it as CVS, complex vector space. So signals can be treated as vectors in complex vector space. So that's what we are going to look at. So as a introduction to this, we will look at the normal vectors. The normal vectors, for example, in a plane, in this plane where we are writing. So if there is a vector A, you must be familiar already that you can resolve these vectors into its x component and its y component. So this is our say the x direction, and this is our y direction. Okay, and the unit vector in x direction is usually called as I cap. The unit vector in y direction is called as j cap. So any vector can be written in terms of its components. So A can be written as ax into I cap plus ay into j cap. So these are some notions that we are familiar with. And then if there is another vector maybe in some other direction, then say, so this is another vector, say b, and that also can be written in terms of its components in x and y direction. Okay, so if you do that, we can write vector b as bx into I cap plus by into j cap. So writing a vector in terms of its components is something all of you are familiar with already. We would like to do similar thing with respect to signals also, that we would like to decompose. This is called decomposition, right? So a given vector it can be decomposed into its components, and when you add up these components you get the resulting vectors. Now what are the properties that make a quantity a vector? We know that vector has a magnitude and a direction, but mathematically if you look at what are the qualities that would make one entity as a vector, is basically if you add these vectors you will get again a vector. Okay? For example, if you add a plus b, if you take any vector and sum them up, then you will get basically a third vector. Okay, so in this case it will be ax plus bx into I cap plus ay plus by into j cap. So this is one important property that is satisfied by any vector, that is we can add them and the result is again a vector. Okay, and it should be in a same space. Those vector will also be in same space. After addition, whatever vector we get, it will also be in the same space. If it is a plane, we add two vectors which are lying on a plane, we will get a third vector which will also be lying on a plane. And we know the rules for addition. One way to think about addition is like you add the x component and you add the y components, and that way you can construct vectors, or you can follow the parallelogram law, or you can follow the triangular law of addition. For example, if this vector if you can shift it in such a way that the tail of the one vector will come at the head of the other vector, and then you can add them. So for example, vector a, if I shift this is vector A, and then vector B also I shift without changing the direction. You have to shift it. The magnitude and direction remains the same, but you can shift them. Vectors can be shifted anywhere on the plane. Okay, it doesn't have any particular association with a particular point. These vectors are free to be shifted anywhere. So so this is vector A, vector B. So vector B, I have put the tail of the vector B, I have put on the head of the vector A, and then vector A plus B is basically this. So this is vector A plus B, vector A plus vector B. So this way you can perform vector addition. Or similarly, another way you can do it by using bringing both tails together and construct a parallelogram out of it. So all of these ideas are familiar to you. But only thing you need to note here is that we can add vectors and we will get the resulting vector in the same domain. Okay, here the domain is a plane, a two-dimensional plane. If it is a 3D space, then we will get the resulting vector in the 3D space. It will not go out of that space. Okay, so that is one property. And the second property that vectors satisfy, the second most important property is that if you take any constant and then multiply with the vector, you get again a resulting vector. This is called scaling. Okay, multiplication by a scalar constant. So if you look at here, this will be ax I cap plus alpha a y j cap. So this is another property that is satisfied by any vector. Anything, if you want to treat it as a vector, these two properties has to be satisfied. Okay, one is that the addition property, and the other is the scaling by a scalar constant. So if any entity which satisfies these two property can be treated as vectors. Now very easily we can see that our signals which we have been studying also satisfy these properties. So if I elaborate the second property, what does it mean? So if you have say our vector A, for example, so if this is vector A, then multiplication by a scalar means if it is a if the scalar quantity is having a magnitude which is say if it is positive, say alpha positive, and also let's say that alpha is greater than 1. So what will be the result of multiplying by alpha? It will be another vector which will have a dimension which is greater than. So this is alpha into a bar. Okay, so it will change its length, it will change its the magnitude of the vector. So multiplication by alpha or a scalar constant changes the length of the vector. Okay, if alpha is less than 1, then its length will be reduced. If alpha is less than 0, then its direction will be reversed. Okay, so let's look at another example. I am multiplying with so this is also like alpha 1 into a, where alpha is less than 0, but alpha lies between say minus 1 and 0. Okay, so if it is then the length will reduce. The initial vector had a larger length, but after multiplication with alpha 1, so alpha 1 is somewhere between 0 and minus 1, then its length will reduce. Since it has negative value, what will happen is that both x and y components will be reversed. So therefore the vector. So this is another property of the vector, that is multiplication by scalar constant. So any entity that satisfies these two properties can be treated as vectors. Okay. Now you can have additional structures in the in the vector space, that is like you can talk about what is called as dot product, etc. Okay, so the length of the vector, for example, the length of the vector is determined. I'm now talking only about vectors in a space like 3D space. So length of a vector is determined by using the notion of dot product. I'm sure that all of you are familiar with this notion of dot product. So what is dot product? If dot product can be taken between two vectors also, but if you take the dot product of a vector with itself, the definition of dot product is like you multiply the components ax into ax plus ay into ay. Okay, so which is basically ax square plus ay square. So this is what we treat as the length square, length of the vector a, square of that. Okay, so if you take the square root of this, so therefore length can be defined as this. So this is a very useful notion, but it is not necessary that this operation can be done in a vector space. Even if this cannot be done, still we can talk about it as a vector space. Okay, so because only two properties are essential, but these are additional structures which are useful. Okay, so this is equal to ax square plus ay square. So this way you can find the length of the vector. Another useful thing you can do with the dot product is that you can find out the projection of one vector. Okay, similarly the projection of one vector on to the other can also be determined using dot product. Okay, so dot product is very useful. First thing I told you is that we can estimate the magnitude or the length of the vector. Second thing we can do with the by using dot product is that we can, if you have two vectors, then we can find out the projection of one vector in the direction of another vector. Okay, so for example, again I am taking this vector a, and then let me take another vector, say this is another vector, let's call it some other name, say c. This is vector c, and then I would like to know how much is the projection of vector a in the direction of vector c. So the way to do it is like you construct a right triangle like this, and then so wherever the right triangle meet, so right triangle passing through the head of this vector a. Okay, and so this will be this line, this perpendicular line will be meeting at a point which passes through the head of this. So we are drawing a perpendicular to c, the direction of c, but passing through the head of vector a. Okay, so then the point at which it meets, so that distance from the origin is what is called as the projection of a. So this can also be found out with the help of the geometric interpretation of the dot product. Okay, so if you have two vectors a and c, so then one way you can write the basic definition of dot product is that you take the components of each vector, multiply the corresponding component, so that is ax into cx plus ay into cy. Okay, so I am assuming that c can also be written as cx I cap plus cy j cap. So we are basically taking in a component wise multiplication. So a is again ax I cap plus ay j cap. So here the x component of a is multiplied with the x component of c, so that is ax cx, and similarly y plus y component of a multiplying with y component of c, so that is ay cy. So this way you can this is the basic definition for dot product. If that is defined for a particular vector space. As I told you, it is not necessary that we have this structure, but if this structure is very useful. Now a geometrical way you can think about vector or the dot product is that you can also write, so this is equal to the modulus of a into modulus of c into cos of the angle between them. Okay, so that means we have to define an angle theta between the vectors. If that is given us, this is geometrical interpretation. Okay, so you have a vector a with magnitude a, you have a vector with magnitude c, then and the angle is theta, then you can define the dot product as magnitude of a into magnitude of c is equal to into cos theta. Okay, so this way, or this is another way of defining the dot product. So this comes from the geometrical interpretation of the dot product. Okay, so by making use of these two, we can easily find out the projection. So what is the projection of a onto c? So therefore the projection, which is the magnitude of a into cos theta, so that is basically this right triangle. If you consider, if you take the cosine of this theta, so then it is like the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. Okay, so cos theta into a will be basically the adjacent side, so that is what we call as the projection is equal to what is it equal to? It is equal to, so from this definition of dot product, it is equal to a dot c divided by modulus of c. So you take a dot c, so that is basically this. If you divide that with c, then you have modulus of a cos theta. So this is also like one of the very useful thing in finding how much of a is present in the direction of c. So what is the component of a in the direction of another vector c? So let us look at it from another point of view. So again, so let me take two vectors. So I am taking two vectors. One is vector a, okay, an alternate view. So that is very useful view from our point of view. So I have a vector a, and now let me draw another vector, say b. This is my b vector and this is my a vector. Here they are lying on a plane, and so my question is that so the difference between these two I would like to minimize. So the question is minimize the difference that is a minus b. Minimize the difference a minus b, or find or change the length of b such that this difference, or let me write it more appropriately. So I am allowed to change the length of b by multiplying it with some constant, say c. C is some constant that I am allowed to multiply with b. So after multiplying, if I take the difference between a and cb, that is a scaled vector, so what is the best value of c that will minimize the difference? Okay, minimize the difference a minus c and find the best value of c. Okay, so find the best value of C. So this is our question. Find the best value of C such that A minus CB is minimized. So B is some vector. So after multiplying with so let's say this is B, and after multiplying with C you will have a vector like this. Okay, if C is less than 1, its length reduces. So let me show B and CB separately. So let me repeat. So there are two vectors. The first vector is this. Okay, so this is the first vector A, and the second vector is this. This is the second vector. Now after multiplying C with the second vector, I will change the direction of the second vector, so that vector will become like this. Okay, this is CB, this is CB. Okay, now so by multiplying with the different values of C, I can change the length of the vector very differently. If C is greater than 1, then definitely I will increase the length of the vector B from B to CB. Okay, so this way I am allowed to do only one modification, that is multiplying the vector with C, and after multiplication what I am interested is in the vectors A minus CB. So what is A minus CB? A minus CB is a vector which is like this. A minus so this is our A minus CB. Okay, so A minus CB. Okay, so that is or in other words you can say that A minus CB plus CB, you will get back A. So this is triangular law of vector addition, you can see. So if I add CB with A minus CB, CB will cancel, and then what is left is A. Okay, I am putting the tail of A minus CB on the head of CB, so that way you can verify it. So this is A minus CB. So what I want to minimize is the length of A minus CB. So the question, so if I rephrase the question, so this is to minimize the length. So minimizing A minus CB means minimizing the length of A minus CB. Now length square is basically A minus CB dot with itself, A minus CB dot with itself. So dot product when you of a vector, if you take you will get the length of that vector. So this is what we want to minimize. Now if you expand this, so there is A dot A, then you have minus C A dot B, then we have minus C B dot A, then we have plus C square B dot B. Okay, so this is what happens you know, after you use the distributive property, you can distribute these terms. So this is what we will get. So this is basically equal to A dot A. Then these two terms, if you look at because A dot B is same as B dot A, there is a commutative property that is satisfied before the dot product. So you can write it as minus 2C A dot B, then plus C square B dot. So this way you can write. So our problem was to minimize. Okay, so minimize the length of this. So we have an expression of for length square. So we can say that which is to minimize length square. So if you minimize the length square, you are basically minimizing the length. Okay, so that is equivalent to minimizing the length. So, or in other words, you can say is that A minus CB is the error vector, and the error we want to make it as small as possible. Okay, so we want the best approximation of A in terms of B. What is the best approximation of A we can do with respect by using the B vector? Okay, by using the scaled version of the B vector. So we have this length which we have to minimize. Now the best approach, or to find the best value of C, to find the best value of C, what we can do is that we can say that d by dc of L square equate to 0. Okay, so you take this L square and differentiate with respect to C and equate that to 0. So what will that give? That will give us either a maxima or a minima. Okay, and let's see what happens if we do that. So that is d by dc. C is the scalar constant. So when you multiply, the first term is basically what? It is basically a dot a. It doesn't have any c in it, so when you differentiate it, it goes to 0. And the second term is the differential. If you do the derivative, it will be 2 into a dot b, and the last one is plus 2c b dot b, and we are saying equate this to 0. So that probably you know that if there is any function which you want to minimize or maximize, then we can take the derivative of that function with respect to the variable with respect to which you want to minimize or maximize, and then equate that to 0. So this, if you look at 2, I can cancel because it is equated to 0, and there is 2 in this term and this term, and therefore we get the value of C. C is basically A dot B divided by B dot B. Okay, so this is what exactly we got what I said earlier without going into the proof. So A dot C divided by modulus of C. Okay, so there is a slight difference here because okay, so let's write that. Okay, so this is equal to, so A dot B. So this is basically the constant value. Okay, so or you can say that this is the best constant. And why we can say that this is the best constant? Because that will minimize the length square. Now let's look at this problem again from the geometrical point of view. So if you have C very big, then this CB is going to become very large, and this A minus CB is going to become very large. And similarly, if you make C negative, then the vector will point toward the opposite direction, and again A minus CB is going to become very large. But there is a particular value which, as I told you earlier, when the length become exactly like when it become perpendicular, it will minimize the length. Okay. Yeah, so in this case it looks like C is equal to 1 because the B is such that it is the projection of A onto the B direction. Okay, so therefore the best approximation of A in terms of CB is equal to, is what? This C which we found out, this is our C that we found out, this multiplying our B, this multiplying our B. Okay. Okay, so that is the approximate. So A approximate, let me say A approximate, the best approximation is equal to Now b dot b, I can write it as modulus b the whole square. A dot b, b dot b, I can write it as, so modulus b the whole square into b. So this is the best approximation that we can have. Okay, so yeah, let's leave it there. Now let us go to the case of signals. So we are going to bring these ideas into the signals. So let me start it with a new page. Okay, so we are now going to look at signals as vectors. So given the problem is this, given so first of all, let me show that signals satisfies the property, the two most important properties that can be treated as so that it can be treated as vectors. Okay, so signals as vectors. Okay, so let's say let g of x and f of x are, let us define them in terms of time, okay, rather than other variable. So let f of t and g of t be two signals that vary with respect to time, that vary with respect to time. Okay, so these are two functions. Signals are nothing but functions, right? Functions of time. Whatever is the independent variable, it varies with respect to that. We have seen various examples of signals earlier. So let f of t and g of t be two signals that vary with respect to time. Now if you add f of t, so property number one we said is that if you add these entities, now they are functions, we will get some new function, okay, say h of t. Okay, so we will get some new function, and that new function is a valid function in the same space where the f of t and g of t are defined. Okay, so two signals that vary with time. Okay, let me say more detail, defined in the domain. You can say that it is defined in the interval from minus infinity to plus infinity. Usually time is allowed to take values from minus infinity to plus infinity. So we will get a h of t which is also a valid function or a signal in the same domain. It will, by addition, doesn't change the domain in which it is going to be defined. Same domain. Okay, that is quite evident. You can take any example also. Say you have this unit step function, for example, u of t. Okay, it is equal to 0 here, and it is equal to 1 for positive. And you can have, so this is first function, and then another function I can define here, which is like say this much only. Okay, so you can define functions in so many different ways. So this is x of t, and then if you add these two functions, what will happen? You will get so this plus this is equal to you will have like this. So this is a valid function with same domain. So this is u of t plus x of t. Okay, so let's say this is 1, so this will be 2. So this way you can add function without any problem. This is a valid operation that we can do. So since it is allowed, it satisfies the first property that vectors would satisfy, or vectors should satisfy. The second property is that you can scale the function. That is, like if you have f of t, you can basically amplify the signal, or attenuate the signal, which is opposite of amplification, and it will become a into f of t. This is amplitude scaling. Okay, for signal we call this as amplitude scaling. So any signal is there, you can always amplitude scale it. That is what some of the system would do. When you design an amplifier, you give an input f of t, the output will be a times, where a is called the gain of the amplifier. Okay, so it will change the voltage amplitude. It will strengthen the signal by multiplying it with a factor, say 10 or something like that. But there are circuits in which the amplitude goes down. Other than that, it will not do anything on the signal. Such circuits are called attenuator, which is the opposite of amplification, where a is less than 1. So if a is greater than 1, we call it as amplification. If a is less than 1, then it is, the word we use in electronics is attenuation. This is the opposite of amplification. Okay, where amplification increase the amplitude, where attenuation decrease the amplitude. So this is also a valid thing. For example, if I plot here say 2x of t, where a is equal to 2. So what will it be? So let's say this is 1. So this is going to give you like this. This will become 2. Okay, earlier it was 1. So 2 into x of t means it strengthens signal. Okay, it multiplying the x of t with 2. So this is also a valid operation. That is the point. So since these two properties are satisfied by signals, which are basically functions here, functions of time here, so therefore signals qualifies. So since addition and multiplication by a scalar are satisfied by signals, they qualifies. But if one of this was not possible to be satisfied, or if it is not a valid operation on these objects, then they don't qualify to become they qualifies to be considered as vectors. Okay, so they satisfy these two properties, therefore they qualify to be called as vectors. If one of them was not satisfied, then these objects cannot be treated as vectors. Okay, so every entity in general we cannot don't satisfy these properties. Maybe one of them is not defined with respect to these properties, so then they cannot be considered as vectors. So for something to be called as vectors, these two properties has to be satisfied, and signals qualifies it. Now the next thing is that, can we have additional structures like dot product? So can we define something similar to that with respect to these vectors, signals as vectors? So what about the analogous operation? How can we find the strength of the signal? Okay, so just like we found the length of vectors in 3D space by taking the dot product. So the question that we can now ask is like, do we have any additional structures? Okay, by structures I mean mathematical structures. Okay, do we have any additional mathematical structures so that we have some ways to find the length of length, or even length is not a good word to call with respect to these signals. So what is the length of the signal, that doesn't make much or you can say magnitude, or you can say strength. So do we have any additional mathematical structure by which we can find length, magnitude, strength? Okay, any of this whatever. The idea is basically something which carries the magnitude of that. If signal is a vector, what is the strength of that vector, or what is the magnitude of that vector? So how can we find the length of the signal if they are functions? So that's our concern right now, and this is something that we have already done earlier. We talked about the energy of signal, right? So we have already used a formula to find the energy of the signal. Okay, so the answer to this is we have a formula to find the energy, or even power also we have defined, power of signals. Okay. We have a formula to find the energy and power of signals. Can we use them to find something analogous to the dot product? Okay, so let's again look at A dot B. We said that it is equal to AX BX plus AY BY plus A Z B Z, if there are 3 components, or if there are n components, then we can just keep on multiplying component wise. So each vector will have some number of n components. Both vector will have, because they both live in the same space, they could be 0, one of the component may be 0, all of that is possible, but dot product means this is what we mean. So now how can you talk about analogous thing? So the way we can talk about analogous thing is like so let's say x1 of t and x2 of t. I am using this notation to talk about something analogous. And what does it do? It basically take the first one and then multiply with the conjugate of the second, and then integrate over the entire domain. Okay, so for energy signal, this is how I will define it. Okay, so this is for energy signal, energy signals x1 of t and x2 of t. So I am giving a analogous thing. And why I have defined it like that? Because if I do it with the same vector, this operation, if I do with the same vector, what do I get? Minus infinity to plus infinity x1 of t multiplying with the conjugate of x1 of t, same thing. Okay, which is nothing but minus infinity to plus infinity the modulus square dt. So this is something that we have seen as energy. So this is energy of x1 of t. Okay, so so this is same thing. If you do a with a, what you get is ax square plus ax square plus ay square plus az square, and that we call it as the length square of vector A. So this is analogous thing. So so if you define something called something like this, okay, what is that something? This is the definition that we are proposing. We are proposing something like this. And why do we propose this? Because you see that if you do that with the same vector, we get energy. So why not propose something like this with respect to 2 vectors? So if dot product of a vector with itself is giving you length, then A dot B, that is between two vectors, they are analogously you are multiplying the components pairwise. So here what we are doing is we are multiplying with the conjugate of the second vector and integrating in the entire domain. And so that is motivated by the definition of energy that we saw earlier. So this operation which we just now did with respect to the signals, which is an analogous operation of dot product, is called inner product. So this name is inner product. Okay. So this is the way we are trying to come up with an additional structure which would help us to define what is called as the strength of the, and energy is something which is talking about the how strong the signal is. If energy is more, the strength is more. Okay, in the case of energy signals. And similarly you can talk about power signal or periodic signal also. I'll come to that later, but right now let us look at energy signals. Okay, so this notion we have now developed, okay, or defined, we can say. So now with this notion, if this notion is there, we should also be able to do the problem similar to what we did with vectors. And what was that problem? Approximation. So now let me look at approximation of one function, okay, or you can say one signal. Signals are basically function. One signal, or function in bracket, let me put. So approximation of one signal in terms of another. Okay, so what is the problem? The problem is we given two functions or signals, whatever, in time, bounded by the range, say minus infinity to plus infinity. Let's say given two functions or signals in this domain, say f of t and g of t. So both are defined in the same interval from minus infinity to plus infinity. Find, the question is this, find the best approximation of f of t. That is, find the best approximation of f of t. We will call it as fa of t is equal to c g of t. Okay, so we are coming up with an approximate function which is basically a scaled version of g of t. And when is or in other words, we can say in other words, what value of c gives us the best approximation? What value of c gives us the best approximation? Okay, so the answer is what? Answer is the c which minimizes, just like before, the c which minimizes f of t minus fa of t, which minimizes this. Okay, this is what is called as the error function. Okay, just like earlier we could call the difference between a and cb, a minus cb we called it. So this we could call it as the error vector here. Okay, e we can call it as the error vector. So we looked at the strength of the error vector and we tried to minimize these length of the error vector by varying c, or we found the value of c which reduces the error. Same approach here. So the answer to the problem is similar. Okay. Only thing is that we need to we are now the vectors are basically functions or signals. So the c which minimizes the error vector. Okay, so this is called the error function here, or error function, or even signal in our context, because signals are functions. So how do you find the strength of the this error signal? Okay, so the strength of E of t, the error signal, is equal to E of t with itself, inner product with itself. That is how we find the strength of the error signal. So which is basically equal to f of t minus fa of t, inner product with itself. So f of t is the original function which we are trying to approximate, and fa of t is basically the approximate signal. Okay. Now what is the approximate signal? Approximate signal is basically c times g of t. C g of t, inner product with itself. Okay, so all that you need to do is apply the definition. So this error is also called the strength of the error signal by taking inner product with itself is also called as the mean square signal, mean square error. Okay, mean square error, or MSE we can call it in short. Okay, that is the strength of error, that is mean square error, or MSE is this. So using the definition of inner product, now we can find the mean square error. So this is equal to, what is the definition? We have first function minus this is the first function, then into conjugate of the second. Right now we are taking all real functions. Okay, now next we will then we integrate t from minus infinity to plus infinity. That's how we find it. So given function, multiply with its conjugate. Okay, here it is both same function, that is why we get the strength or the mean square error. So all that we need to do is, like the properties of integrals we have to use. So this is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity f of t. Since they are real, okay, so right now we are looking at real, so when you take conjugate, nothing happens, it is just that itself. Okay, considering the real functions. But in general, what we are going to do it is, we will also do the same exercise with the complex functions. Okay, so with considering real functions, so you just need to multiply this. So f of t multiplying with itself, that is square of that. Next one is minus c f of t g of t, then again minus c g of t f of t, then finally plus c square g square of t dt. So this is basically what we have. So you can split it into multiple integrals. Then this I can combine and say minus 2c integral minus infinity to plus infinity f of t g of t dt. Then finally I have c square integral square dt. Okay, so now, so this is basically the mean square error. Now we want to minimize this, minimizing MSE with respect to C. Okay, here C is also a real. Okay, so I am assuming C is also real. We will go to complex as a next step. Okay, so that is d by dc of MSE is what? The first function is independent of C, the second function is having C, so that is minus infinity to plus infinity f of t g of t dt, then plus 2c integral g of t square dt, and this we are equating to 0 to find the best value. So therefore the C that we will get out of it, just like earlier, we will get minus infinity to plus infinity f of t into g of t dt divided by integral g of t the square. So this is the best approximation. Okay, any questions? Any questions?
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, why we have taken the g of t, sir?
Why we have taken g of t? So we have two functions given to us. So let me just show you the problem that we are solving. The problem is this: we have two functions, f of t and g of t. They are two different functions defined in the same domain, that t varies from minus infinity to plus infinity. The question that is asked is, given these two functions, find an approximate function for f of t, which we call as f suffix a of t, fa of t. And what is fa of t? Fa of t is basically some scalar multiplication on g of t. So which constant, when multiplied with g of t, reduces my error signal? That is the difference between if I take an example, this will be more clear. So let me just show you an example. So for example, you have a say a piece of signal like this. So this is say f of t, and you have another signal, say which is looking like a triangle like this. Okay, this is our g of t. Now what I am allowed to do is that g of t I can multiply with some constant. Okay, g of t I can multiply with some constant, so that the difference between f of t and the cg of t is minimized. So if you just take the difference between f of t and g of t, you will see that there is large error. That means if you subtract these two, it is not going to be very small function, it is going to be a large function. But instead of simply subtracting, if I multiply it with some constant, say something like this, and change this amplitude a bit like this, and then if you take the difference between f of t, so this is my cg of t. All I am doing is just scaling it. Okay, so how much I should scale? Should I scale this much, or should I scale like this? Right? So what amount I should scale? That is the problem that we are looking at. If I scale it too much, then again the error will increase. If I scale it, if I don't scale it also, error is more. So there is an optimum value of scaling, so that f of t and cg of t are very close, so that their difference, the strength of the difference, is minimum. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sir, in the previous part, sir, you have found out the strength of the signal above two different functions.
strength of the signal. That
Yes,
is
sir.
energy formula.
Yes, sir. Energy formula.
Now you can't call it a strength with respect to two. This is basically called inner product of two signals. Okay, strength comes when you take here this one. So this is supposed to be x1 with itself. Then we can talk about it as strength. You understand?
So then what is the above one, sir? Then you have
This is,
what?
see, a dot a, if you take, you will get something. You will get a measure of length, right? A dot
Yes,
a,
sir.
if you take, you get a measure of length. If you do a dot b, what is that? It is the same question. So we define a dot b as an operation between two vectors, and when you do that operation with the same vector, we get a measure of length. That is how a dot product is defined. In a similar manner, we try to define inner product of two functions. So when you do the inner product of a signal with itself, then we get the energy of the signal or the strength of the signal. You follow?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's a way of definition. You always define something in a generic form, and then when you apply that into a special case, we get some property of a particular signal. So that is the same approach we did with respect to dot product. So whenever dot product was initially defined, it is defined in a generic way between two different vectors. But when you do that operation with the same vector, you get a measure of length. But since it is defined for two vectors, you can also find other things, like we can talk about how much is the component, right? This also you can talk about. I mean, the projection of one vector onto the other. So this is because it was defined a dot c, or between two vectors it was defined. That's why we could talk about this. So once you define in a generic way, you have multiple applications. So same way we have a definition of inner product between two different signals or two different functions, and that notion we are making use in solving this problem that we have done. Okay, so if you see here, if you look at this, since these are real functions, you can write it as inner product of f of t with g of t divided by g of t. This way you can write. So we could come to this because so right now we are looking at real functions and real constants. Okay, our domain is the function is basically defined in a real space. So I have to specify that so that when you take the complex conjugate, nothing happens here. Okay, so this is a real space. We are talking about real space, functions in real space. Yes, you were asking some other question.
So the question was about the dot product, sir. In the vector form, so we got a dot b equals the mod of a mod of b cos theta.
That is a geometrical interpretation. Okay, so the definition of dot product is actually this. Whatever I have written in green, that is the definition of dot product. This is the definition. Okay, definition of dot product. Just like I have defined the inner product, the dot product is defined this way. Now this one is what the other one. This is basically geometrical interpretation. Now we don't have that geometrical interpretation for signals, okay, because they are entirely different entities, right? I mean, like different objects, different kind of object, but they have the properties of vectors, which are like they can be added and we can get a new vector and we can multiply them with a scalar constant. But these are dot product is an additional structure that we are giving to these vectors actually live in Euclidean space, right? They are living in the three-dimensional space, so they are contained there. Of course, we can extend this to n-dimensional space. That is another way we, mathematics always develop that way. So you do something in a smaller dimension and then you can always extend it to a larger dimension, which need not exist, but still you can talk about some geometry there. Whereas when you talk about functions, our geometrical interpretation is limited. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions?
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, but in signal, it is the another signal is taken in terms of conjugate, sir.
Repeat the question. I didn't get it.
Sir,
are you
yes, sir,
talking about this one?
Yes, another signal is taken in terms of conjugate.
Yeah. So this is the definition of inner product. First function multiplied by the conjugate of the second function. Okay. So there is a first function x1 of t and there is a second function x2 of t. So first function, the definition is multiply it with the conjugate of the second function and then integrate it from minus infinity to plus infinity. So you will get basically if x1 of t and x2 of t are complex functions, you will basically get a complex value ultimately.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just like a dot product, you get some constant, right? When you multiply two vectors or take the dot product, you get a constant value, which is basically we call it as the length square. So similarly here we will get a complex value. If functions are complex, if they are real, we will get a real value. So the inner product will give you a real value out of two functions. Two functions are given as input and the inner product is calculated, you get some real value out of it. Yeah. Any other question? Because this topic is very, very important. I told you this is central to the course. You understand this, everything can be put in or associated in a very nice way. Everything that you study in this course. In fact, without I telling this mathematical aspect of it, I have already introduced this. When we expanded a signal in terms of impulse functions, shifted and scaled versions of impulse functions, we were actually doing this. We were approximate a given function in terms of delta functions. I will come into that in a while. You can look at that also from this perspective. So this is a very powerful perspective which will be very useful for you to understand things in a deeper way.
Sir,
yeah.
One more question, sir.
Yeah.
So when we have taken the differentiation of the function, sir,
yes,
and equate it to 0. So there you said that we got either maxima or minima. Then how do we know that we are getting maxima or minima?
Correct. So with respect to vectors, I gave you a argument. For example, if you go back to the vectors, you can look at the picture and look at this. So we are trying to minimize the length of the red vector, which I denoted as A minus CB. I can call it as vector E also. This is called the error vector. Okay, error vector. Now you look at what we are allowed to do is vary C. Let's say C is real. So if you take positive values of C, you start with C equal to 0. If you start with C is equal to 0, when you multiply 0 with B, you get a 0 vector. So the error vector is basically A itself, right? The error vector is going to be A itself. If CB is 0, the error vector is C.
Yes, sir.
Now you start increasing the value of C. Say it will be something like this, and then the error vector is like this, which is having larger length. And you keep on increasing what will happen? Initially this error vector will reduce and reduce and reduce until some point. What is that point? That point is here. This is the minimum value of error vector. After that, what happens if I extend it further? If I extend the CB further, then the error vector will again increase. So you see that it has to be a minimum. If I plot the error vector length as a function of C, what I am going to get is from this picture only I am talking about. Okay, I am just looking at the geometrical picture and I am talking about. So this is basically the modulus square of the error vector, and you will see that there is one value which is C minimum, where the function is going to be minimum. Any other value that you give, it is going to increase like this. So we are finding there is only one minimum here for this function, and that corresponds to this error vector become perpendicular to B. When it become perpendicular, the length of the vector will become minimum. You can try this for taking different values of C. If C is very very small, you have a large error vector, the length is more. So what dot product of E with itself will do is find the square of this distance. And if you have the error vector like this, then also it is. So for negative values again, so negative values, what happens? CB will be like this and the error vector will be like this. So it's much larger. So as you go to more and more negative, you can see that the error vector length increases. And similarly to the right side, both sides it will increase, but there has to be a minima in between. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Geometrically, okay. So that's all we need right now. But other way, mathematically, you can look at other way also. That is, you can take second derivative, right? D square by dc square. You might have studied. So when you take the second derivative of a function, of the same function, if the second derivative is positive, then it corresponds to minima, right?
Yes, sir.
So that also you can do it if you want, like d square by dc square of this MSE, or L square. We will call it as L square. So what we are going to get, so this is independent of C, so you will get basically 2 B dot B, and B dot B has to be positive because it is a length, so this is greater than 0. That means the curvature is upward, so it is a minimum.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So initially the slope is say negative, then it became less negative, then it became positive, and so that is what we mean by curvature becoming positive. So it has to be a minimum. That's a mathematical point of view, but it is very clear from even the geometrical picture here. Any other question? And same picture exists for functions also. I showed you this picture, right? So if you look at here, in each case, if you plot the error function, okay, if I take the red g of t and plot the difference, it is e of t, what is going to happen is like something like a cusp like this, and then almost like this. The sine function is subtracted, and like this. If I subtract the red from the red, so it has a large error because its amplitude is very very small. But if I have a like the blue one. If I do it, okay, so this is the red one, so let me put it in red, something like this. So now if I go to the red or the blue one, so maybe it will be something like this. And then something like this, so you get the error function much smaller. Okay, so what we are doing is we are taking square of this and integrating it to find the strength of it. So if I take the square of the first function, it is going to be like this, right? I take the square of first one. So when you find the area under this is what is called the MSE, mean square error. But if I do the same thing for the blue one, it will be much smaller, something like this. So we need to multiply with an appropriate constant so that its amplitude will be changed, so that after subtraction you get a very small e of t, so that when you square and integrate you will. So this is basically inner product of e with e. Clear?
Yes, sir.